Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 448 of the MTGGoldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week. Kicking things off with the owner of MTGGoldfish, Richard. How are you this fine Monday, Richard?
Good morning, Seth. I'm recovered. I'm alive.
Are you?
I beat smallpox.
Oh yeah, you were in rough shape. I've got a little cold, and then when I was thinking like, oh, I could complain about my cold, I was like, no, Richard's got like literally the plague, so I can't say anything about my stuffy nose or whatever. But we also have another co-host, Crib. How are you today, Crib?
I'm back. My power's back, and so Richard and I were both gone. That's wild.
Yeah.
Now we're back.
I feel like this is the last week. It was me and Tomer because Richard was plagued and Krim was hurricaned. I think that's the first podcast that we've ever had both of you missing since we've been a crew. I'm pretty sure that's the first time that's ever happened. So unique cast last week for sure. But back to normal this week, and we have some pretty good topics to talk about. So we got the full Wilds of Eldraine set. We still have some more thoughts, some questions about the set. So we're going to talk Wilds of Eldraine. We just got a ton of new Secret Lair drops. The fall super drop just was announced. So we might get into that a little bit. There's also a weird special event, no ban list historic on Magic Arena we might mention, and then answer some fish mail. So that's an overview for today. Before we get into it though, a reminder that today's show is brought to you by Card Conduit, and Card Conduit's the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. And if you ever get tired of all the hassles that go into buy listing your cards, Card Conduit lets you skip them with their curated service. You can send in as many cards as you want with a buy list value of $1 or more and pay just a 5% service fee. And if you want to do a bit of work, you can use their sorted service where you list and sort your cards in advance and pay just 2%. And either way, you're going to get a detailed report with the results and a fast payment once your order is processed. And right now, you can even get another 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/MTGGoldfish. Card Conduit, they're the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. So thank you to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And let's talk some Magic, and let's start with what I would say is the biggest news. We got a new Magic set that is about to drop. So we have the full spoiler for Wilds of Eldraine. This weekend's kind of like early access stuff, pre-release stuff, and then the set officially releases next week, digitally and in paper. Now that we have the full set, we have a few cards and questions we wanted to go over, but I'm curious, what do you guys think of the set as a whole? This is our second visit to Eldraine. Always a little bit of challenge, I think, with returning planes. Can you meet expectations? Eldraine in specific is like a historically broken set. What do you think now that we see Eldraine 2.0?
Oh, this set is actually kind of balanced. Like it, I guess that could be wrong, right? Because like maybe we get our hands on the cards and then they get added into the meta and it's the worst thing ever. But like so far, this is the perfect mark. It hits the mark for me. It looks like it's really powerful, but also not Eldraine 1 powerful.
What about you, Richard?
Krim says balanced. He just means there's no Oko or Once Upon a Time, but
or Embercleave,
very strong,
or Questing Beasts.
You're putting Questing Beast up there? Wait,
Questing Beast.
I know he's wrecking the One Ring in Modern, but hold on here.
Beast with when he was in Standard.
Oko.
I mean, yeah, of course, Oko was leagues ahead, right? But like then you had Bone Crusher, like you had so many things, like we're talking about the bottom, like if we went with like maybe the 15th to like the 20th best card in Eldraine 1, that was probably a top 5 for some of the other sets that have come out in Magic.
Yeah, even after the bannings, it's still Eldraine, right?
Yeah, wild.
But
we're in Wilds now.
Adventures, in Wilds. I don't know why there's so many competitively cost adventures. We just don't want to ever run out of cards. I'm waiting for the day where we just play the same card over and over again, like 5 times. Like, play from the front side, exile, play the back side, activate its ability from the graveyard, return to your hand. Like, woo! You thought Standard was grindy? I think Standard's getting grindier. Like, some of these cards come back like 4 times, have like 4 castings. I don't know. They're allergic to top deck wars and games ending, but I don't know. I think the cards are very powerful. There are cards that look like they're made for 60 card instead of the usual commander set.
Yeah.
So whether this changes Standard, I don't know. I'd like to get your opinions on it. But there are a bunch of cards that you could see being played in Standard, right? Is it in the right colors, and does it beat Sheoldred, et cetera, et cetera? We'll find out. But it looks like an exciting set. It's not going to be a flop, I don't think. I think we will see Eldraine in Standard. But what will it be will be the question.
Yeah, that's the question. Like, this set it looks very good to me. And I think I like where they put the power in this set, where the way they designed the set, to me, it looks like they avoided like Sheoldreds and Okos and these like generically Fable the Mirror Breakers, these like generically powerful, put you in every single deck type cards for the most part. You could argue that there's like, I don't know, there's some cards that are just fine, but there's nothing super pushed like that. Most of the power seems focused on specific archetypes, like play the roll deck and I'm going to be really good. Play a spell slinger deck and I'm going to be really good. So I really like that direction. I think it's a really, really healthy direction to go. I do have a little fear that, like, just looking through the set, is this actually going to defeat 2 years worth of really good cards? The problem is, like, we still have a lot of those generically powerful cards. We still have Sheoldreds and Wandering Emperors and the Wedding Announcements. And when you see like 3 Blind Mice and then look at Wedding Announcement, you're like, oh, like, yeah, this is just like worst Wedding Announcement in like 99% of decks, right? So I do have a fear that Standard is not going to be immediately shaken up as much as I'd like. Although looking at this set, if they just keep designing sets like this, I feel like Standard could end up in a really good place eventually. We'll see if people still care about Standard when eventually comes. Like, that's the like, if it's still Sheoldred for another year and like control decks for another year, is it going to maintain people's interest? But I don't know. What do you think, Grim? Are you expecting like a wholesale upheaval to the format with these cards? Or do you think it's more, some around the edges stuff? Are you expecting a bunch of new decks, I guess is the question? Or are we like slotting some stuff into the existing good decks?
Obviously the existing good decks will still be there. But then there's going to be a few new decks too. I think there will be a few.
Don't say fairies.
I mean, yeah, actually, yes. But, okay. I believe that Ivy, I think we did a top 10 video, right? But yeah, I do believe Ivy and that whole archetype that you were jamming like week 0 or whatever with Venerated Rot Priest. I don't know. Maybe that gets a huge boost, right? Because of the 1-drop fairy. Then there's actual just fairies. And I like, again, maybe I'm a little bit biased because I want there to be fairies. There's all the sweet new value cards that are in color pairings that don't have a home yet, right? Like a lot of these adventures could also just make an adventure deck happen right now, potentially, right? Because like there are some sweet adventures in Teamer. There's no Lucky Charm or anything like that this format, thank God. But yeah, there's just so many good cards, and I just like genuinely just good, not busted. So I think, I don't know if Eldraine is going to solve all of our woes. That's a pun because Wilds of Eldraine. But on top of that, I will say that I think this whole 3-year Standard thing is a slow burn. It's gonna. My hot take is that I think it does make Standard interesting now. We're gonna have a bigger and a deeper card pool eventually, and then I actually think that this whole 3-year Standard thing might actually help Standard a lot.
So Krim said a key word there. He said good, but not busted. The problem is we only play busted cards in Standard, right? That is the problem. Like, once you add all your busted? Like fairy synergies together, once you've like assembled Fairy Tron, it's still not as good as like a Sheoldred. Like, I could just play a 1-card Troned up Sheoldred, but that's okay. Synergy decks. So I'm like, great synergy decks, but what are the Jund cards I could slap Sheoldred with here, right? So maybe we get
Voidrend
color combinations like Golgari or something, because there's some good green cards you want to play. But I still feel we're going to be in a good stuff meta. I don't know that there's any synergies that will just straight up overtake our good cards.
I mean, we got to remember this is a long process. Like, this set gives me hope for like a year or two from now. But remember, like, Wizards thought we were rotating in September. When they designed these cards, they were designing, expecting rotation, expecting 2 years of cards in Standard. So they were not designing like with this expectation. That's something that happened after the set was designed. So I feel like, yes, I agree with Richard in the short term. Like, right now, Sheoldred's still there, and that's a problem. Good but not busted is great. Synergistic and like different archetypes is great, but we might have to wait to see the payoff until after the busted cards, quote unquote, or like those generically good cards end up rotating in a year or two. So I think like we're going down a path that I think is really healthy. And this set gives me a ton of excitement for like Standard a year from now. But short term, I'm kind of like, I bet I'm still going to be seeing a lot of Sheoldreds or a lot of the Wandering Emperors, just those like any black deck should play me, any white deck should play me style cards until we actually get further down this path. So I think we're on a really good path. We're just at the start of the path, and it's going to take another year of like set design and eventually a rotation to really see the fruits of where we're going. So I think I agree with Richard short term, but I agree with Crimp long term that like a year from now, I think if they keep doing this, we're going to be in a really good spot, and it could be an overall positive for Standard. We're just going to go through I think a clunky year this year, as like some of the mistakes of the past are not leaving the format this time around. And I don't know if the synergy cards can compete with just the generically good cards from a year or two ago.
I get that, like we're probably tired of seeing like, the pillars of like last Standard, right? But I do think that in a Standard format, there will always be a card that or whatever in a certain color we're all going to gravitate towards that we always include into our deck. And it just might be a little annoying because, black had been so dominant for so long, right? But like Wandering Emperor, Sheoldred, these are fine. I think cards that just are naturally, there's got to be one generically good card, sure, that everybody wants to play. I think it's fine that these cards exist. So I'm gonna.
But that means your fairies don't get to see play, because why would I put all your fairies together when I could just play a generically good card that's better than any of your synergistic cards? Like, why do all the work of like, I'm going to play a 2/3 that might draw a card when I attack with a fairy, when I can just be like, oh, I'm going to play Sheoldred and you die?
Well, simply have a plan for these cards, right? And try your best to like stop them and see. Like, it's too early for me because I won't say that it's all gloom and doom until I have the cards and I've played with them. Right. And I will say that right now, I think that fairies, if your opponent is just jamming a 4-drop, then hopefully you have something ready for that. That's the best case scenario, obviously, because they're also going to play 30 things before it. But we're going to see how dominant black is. We know that it's still going to be good, but I don't know. I want to see how it plays because I think it's fine that these cards in like Wandering Emperor exist.
It'll be interesting. I'm excited to see how it plays. I would say I agree that like there's always going to be best cards, but I feel like we're in this weird mix right now where to me Eldraine feels like a synergistic set where the goal is, and Wizards has actually talked about this when they talked about changing rotations, they want to move towards like making different archetypes and not just generic good stuff decks. Like that's where they are trying to push the format. And I think we can see that in Eldraine where it's like, I want you to be a tap deck. I want you to be a roll deck. I want you to be a fairy deck. Like these synergies that work well together and look pretty powerful together. But I think we still have just like the leftovers from the last era of design, which was like, let's just put busted commander cards and hopefully Standard will be okay with it. So I think with the leftovers hanging on is the part that's concerning. Although there's a ton of stuff I'm really hyped for. I'm really hyped to like try a lot of this stuff. And I agree that we gotta wait and see. Like maybe some of this stuff will play really well. Maybe the synergy decks can compete with the generic good stuff decks. Worst case, it doesn't, and I think we're still on a really good path for the long term with Standard, with more sets like Eldraine, I think. So I think we're on a good path regardless. It's just a matter of how quick we end up getting to the end of the path and really seeing that payoff. But anyway, let's talk some specific cards. There's a few cards. We went through a lot last week, but there's still a few cards that I had questions about that were spoiled since last podcast. Richard, why don't you guide us through some of these spoiler cards?
All right. We'll jump straight to the modern hype. Up the Beanstalk. Green card, 2 mana. It's an enchantment. When Up the Beanstalk enters the battlefield, and whenever you cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater, draw a card. So people are imagining you play this. You evoke some elementals. I guess Solitude and Fury in specific. You draw cards, pop off. It's like the One Ring. Are we buying it? I guess Omnath can pop off pretty hard with this.
Yeah, that's true.
Does it need to pop off any harder though? Like that is the question.
So
does it care to play a 2-drop to do that?
So it does cycle when it ETBs. So I like that aspect of it. That does really reduce the cost. That's not enough to make it playable. I'm pretty skeptical. Like, sure, you can draw off your evoke elementals, but like, do you need that? Do you really want to be taking off turn 2 to play this card that just cantrips in hopes that your Solitude is slightly better the following turn or whatever? Like, I don't personally see this being a super chase card. I don't think it triggers off enough. Like, once you get past, you have what? Solitude, you have Fury, and then you're to the, I guess, Leyline Binding. That's another one. Maybe Leyline Binding triggers
it's a spell.
it.
It's not even a creature.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's like a little better.
Affinity is probably the real home for this.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what other spells actually cost here? So Thought Monitor is 5. What's the Frog? How much does that cost?
Thought Monitor is 7. Frogmite's 4.
Okay,
Mirror Enforcer is
4.
big enough. Yeah, Mirror Enforcer, Sojourner's Companion's big enough. So Affinity,
like, I feel because they actually can cast the cards they draw, so they play this and then they just like vomit out like a million creatures and then hope you don't sweep them, and then that's it. Like, I think that actually might be legit rather than Omnath, who, if they're just comfortably casting their evoke elementals, you probably won already. They don't need to be drawing cards. Like, they don't care for it. So,
I mean, if you're just evoke elementaling, isn't it essentially Risen Reef, but like maybe worse? I guess it doesn't die to
but Risen Reef is one of the best cards in their deck. So wouldn't that be decent?
Yeah.
Risen Reef makes the lands, though.
I think our conversation has made me slightly higher on it. I'm still not buying the staple hype, but I think I've come around to the point where, like, you could probably build a deck in Modern that could take advantage of this and actually be pretty good.
Leyline Binding is key, I think.
Yeah.
Leyline Binding actually makes this kind of sweet.
Leyline Binding, Solitude, Fury, that's like 12 spells in your deck that would trigger it. That even by itself isn't bad, right? It does reduce the cost of like pitching things to your evoke elementals too. Yeah, maybe I'm coming around to
like
it.
Affinity. Thought Monitors, Ancestral Recall. Come on.
So much card draw.
So good. Okay, the Iron Crag. So 2 mana, legendary artifact. Tap it to add a mana. So it's a 2 mana rock. Whenever a legendary creature enters a battlefield under your control, you may have the Iron Crag become a legendary equipment named Everflame Hero's Legacy. If you do, it gains 3 equip. Creature gets +3/+3 and loses all other abilities.
So obviously, if you're playing Commander, this card's really good. Like, this is just like a Commander staple, right? Because it's a 2 mana rock, and there just aren't that many 2 mana rocks. I mean, if you're someone who's in the play only 2 mana rock camp, this gives you another 2 mana rock when there's only 5-ish maybe.
But you have signets. And like
yeah, I guess it depends on your color. So
talismans,
if you're monocolor, I think then you probably need to get to it.
Colorless, yeah.
But what about standard? What about how good? We haven't had a 2 mana rock in standard since World Wake. It's literally been more than a decade. Wizard shies away from 2 mana rocks. Is this a standard card? Does being legendary kill it? Is this going to be a staple that's playing turn 3 Sheoldreds now in every deck? Like, it gets around the legend rule a little bit because the first time you can like turn it into an equipment and then play a second one, but you can't stack up a bunch on the battlefield. Very curious what you guys think of this card for standard.
I think it's definitely like kind of, you hear Mana Rock and you immediately think Commander, so like why would it be good in standard or like a format like Pioneer? But you know what? I actually could see this being kind of useful, right? Like, I mean, dropping it down on turn 2 and then being able to get, your 4-drop, which by the way, the whole format has like 54 drops. I think you're happy to get to 4 on turn 3, right?
Yeah. I think it's worth it.
It's legendary though.
It is legendary.
Like that's if it was non-legendary, it'd be a different conversation. What are our current standard ramp cards?
We have, so the only 2 mana ramp in standard are creatures that die to cut down. So you have 2 mana dorks. So if you want to play ramp on 2 that doesn't die to creature removal, this is, I believe, the only option.
Remember the old Jund Windgrace deck or whatever that's like trying to get up to 5 to reanimate? What were they using to ramp? I don't remember.
Were they? Did they ramp? I guess it was probably Fable.
They did, but yeah, they had Fable, and then they also had Windgrace himself. But yeah, like
I think I think the equipment part is kind of useless.
Yeah, the equipment's bad.
That's vanilla.
Like it's really just a 2-mana legendary mana rock.
It opens up really explosive draws. Like the ramp decks, you can play this on 2, Invasion of Zendikar 3, and then Atraxa or Tally 4. That's a pretty nutty start. And even if you legend reel yourself, if you're slamming a Tally or Atraxa, like you generate so much card advantage. What does it matter at that point? So that part's appealing. Just like the speed of this card.
Yeah, I think it'll be played. I think the downsides of ramping are kind of gone in 2023 because all of your top end have so much value. So the problem with ramping is like you ramp and then somehow your bomb gets removed or something and then you're out of luck. But we have so much value that you can just play this generically. Like you don't really need to kind of go all in or like figure out like, oh, it's got to be a Karn or something. Like just like any dirtily 6-drop will get you there. So maybe this is fine.
Yeah, running out of action in your ramp deck is very much like a 2013 problem. I don't think it happens anymore.
I think you do actually just die before you run out of action.
Usually, yeah.
Okay, here. This is what I really want to talk about, guys. Rabbit Unicorns. Regal Bunnicorn. 2 mana, white spell, 1 and a white. It's a creature rabbit unicorn. Regal Bunnicorn's power and toughness are each equal to the number of non-land permanents you control.
Is it the white Goyf, Richard?
Goyf get eaten by a rabbit unicorn? Is this? So non-land. So
non-land tokens, clues,
you have
food.
to be tokens. You have to be
enchantments,
tokens,
rolls, right. Planeswalkers,
food, treasures.
There are many.
This is way too much work.
I think it's too much work to be good. There's a lot of good cards that just like put multiple permanents on the battlefield, though. Think of like Blood Tithe Harvester, Wedding Announcement. Michael, I think you can make this big. The question is that enough? Is just like, what if this is consistently a 2-mana 6/6? Is that even good enough?
Like it needs to be a 2-mana 6/6 on turn 2.
Oh
turn
no!
3 when you start
No!
Right? Like. If you're just going to girdle around and then power it up later, like that's kind of useless because it'll just get killed and chumped or cut down before it gets to the right size.
Yeah.
So you really kind of need to like turn 1 something, turn 2 Bunnicorn, turn 3 more stuff and like start smashing with a 5/5 or a 6/6. Then I think it could be good.
It's pretty bad against Wraths.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean like That's expected, right? Like, it's a creature. It's going to get eaten by a wrath.
Well, but I mean, it's bad in the sense that, like, if you get wrath and top deck this, it's probably a 1/1. Compared to other 2-drops that maybe, like, a Spirited Companion even is not the worst top deck after you get wrath because you start to, like, rebuild a little bit, but...
I mean, I think this card is, like, outside of its cuteness, I don't really see what it does. Like, it's a solid 2-drop, I guess. It's fine in, like maybe Mardu, but or green white, but like I don't know. It's most of the time just gonna eat it, go right to the graveyard. You do have some sweet stuff left in like specifically the Mardu colors from Innistrad because like so many things making blood tokens like whatever blood fountain, all this stuff. So that's like potentially 2 permanents on turn 1, and then turn 2 you play this, so that's 3 permanents. So it's a 3/3. Turn 3 you then what like play like Wedding Announcement. And that's potentially like now a 5/5. Yeah. So like these are like that's like the best case scenario that I'm painting in my head right now. Maybe there's a lot better. I'm sure there's maybe a few like differences in like whether the number can go up or down. But for the most part, I think like you could do that. But then like Seth had mentioned, a board wipe does like Shadow Realm you, and it has no trample, so it gets chumped all the time. I don't know. This card
it needs
feels
evasion.
Okay.
You think it needs evasion?
Yeah. I think this is probably just going to be bulk.
And are people really talking about this for Modern? What are we calling it, Tarmogoyf?
I think people have talked about it more for Pioneer. I've heard the like Pioneer Goyf or whatever. It could show up in like the Convoke deck in Pioneer, I think. But I think this card's actually, I think it's the best version of what it is. But none of the previous versions of this have been even close to playable. So I'm not sure it's enough to actually be good. Even though I think it is the best version of the grow based on what's on the battlefield card we've seen.
Like, it's really hard to have any legitimate amount of permanence on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Like anything. Like even if it's food, like treasures, like anything, right? Because if you have that much, you're probably winning already. And people will metagame to make sure you don't have that. So you might be like, oh, you know, we'll go tokens and all their spot removal will be useless. And then people will be like, wow, this rabbit deck is pretty good. I'll just play this like weedy sweeper thing, and then like you're like totally destroyed, right? So
I mean, temporary lockdown pants.
Oh god,
so hard.
No.
And that's it's not like that card is like, you know, fringe.
What about
it really needed flying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If it could fly,
you can't have a flying bunny corn though. That would just be too absurd. That's breaking my immersion, Richard. That's breaking my immersion. Yes.
That's absurd. Let's go back to true fantasy here. Rabbit unicorns.
What do you think about this next 2-drop? I'm curious. This seems like a Richard card to me, but I talked to Krim and he didn't really like it, so I'm curious what Richard thinks. You're the tiebreaker in this one.
Okay, Mosswood Dreadnite, 2 mana. It's a 3/2. Okay, it's an adventure card. Let me read the normal mode. So it's a 3/2 trample. When it dies, you may cast from your graveyard as an adventure until the end of your next turn. And then the adventure side is 2 mana sorcery adventure, draw a card, and lose 1 life. This card's trash. I think people overvalue it. I think people way overvalue, because here's the deal, right? You will play it as a 2 mana 3/2. Like, you're not going to spend your turn 2 to like draw a card and lose a life. And then when it dies, you're not going to waste your turn 3 to draw a card and like leave a mana floating. And then even if you actually spent all this mana and did all the stuff, it's just like weird graveyard trespass, or not graveyard. What's the other one? Underdog.
Tenacious Underdog.
Tenacious Corn Dog.
Right?
Corn Dog.
Yeah, so there's so much stuff going on. It looks like it's good, but like you really don't want to cast it when it dies. Like you don't want to go off curve just to draw a card. And
Tenacious
you spent
Underdog.
mana, right? Like you spent mana to do it, right? So you're doing 4 mana 3/2 trample, draw a card after your opponent removes. So it's not even that good, right? Like I don't know. I feel it's way overhyped. Sure, you might play it somewhere, but it's not like the greatest thing ever.
I mean, Tenacious Underdog sees a lot of play, right? And this is like,
it gets subbed out though.
The math is similar. Like Tenacious Underdog's 4 mana to blitz. This is 4 mana to adventure and get on the battlefield. But it can actually block. It can play defense. It also has trample. It doesn't have haste like Underdog, so it's not as aggressive, but it is a repeatable blocker. I feel like our standard's so grindy that a card like this, I guess it lines up poorly with Sheoldred in specific, because you don't necessarily want to be drawing with Sheoldred out, but it's so grindy that this like late game value engine that just keeps coming back and keeps coming back, that's very appealing to me. My biggest concern is just like green kind of sucks in standard and has for like forever now. So it is a green card, which is just a vote against it based on its color, but I think the card's really good. I think this is the recursive nature of this makes me very interested in it as a standard card, to the point where I want to like, couldn't you just play the mono black deck and splash green for this to go with your Sheoldreds? It works well with Sheoldred, because then you're.
Why would I do that when why would I do it when I have blue, right? Splash blue, and then you'd be Dimir mid range, and you'd be good.
But then you don't have Dreadnite.
You are correct. Like, I mean, okay, when I said like. Obviously, I don't think it's like the worst card I've ever seen or anything like that. Right? I just
You're kind of meh.
It's kind of mediocre, right? Like of all the adventure things that we're seeing, this one's probably the least interesting. And like it's asking for you to sink a lot of mana into it over time. Now, whereas like Tenacious Corn Dog, it gives you that haste, which means it is a real threat. You do have to actually kill that eventually. And every time it sends itself off and out, like off the board, it draws you a card. So you're rewarded for spending your 4 mana that turn. So this does reward you by getting you to draw a card, sure. But then you have this 3/2 that just sits there. and then it's going to die again, and then what, you lose another life and draw a card? Okay, here you go.
I don't know, though, because I see people like Tenacious Underdog just smash into a Sheoldred because they want to cycle it for 4 mana. So it's not like Tenacious Underdog's always like getting in there with its haste anyway.
No, but it can, right? Like if like at least it can do that. This ain't gonna do that at ever, right? Unless you have like
what about both? Just playing both. That sounds like a standard deck to me.
You're loaded with a bunch of miserable 3/2s.
Razorlash Transmogrant, throw that in there. There's that skeleton 1-drop that comes back from the graveyard. Throw in an Urborg Gorgoyf, and we have a tier 3 deck.
Yo, that is.
Remember the original Knight? Like it was like a 1-mana 1/1 Death Toucher.
Oh yeah,
that card
pay 3.
That card was good.
No. What?
I mean,
you had Knight synergies.
I
like,
guess
who's gonna spend 3 mana to draw a card and then like get a 2-for-1 with the Death Toucher? Like it's a lot of setup.
I think Edgewall Innkeeper.
I think
Innkeeper skewed my perception of adventures. I think.
Yeah.
Okay, all just incidentally drew a card.
Or the Clover or whatever. This is a different story.
Yeah.
Right? But we're just talking about Jundi cards. And I think it's replaceable. Like I think you could play any random 2-drop and it's like just as good. So I wouldn't want to play green just because of this card. I don't know if Seth is serious about that. If he's gonna add green to his black deck just to play this card.
I mean, I might throw in some other cards too, but I'm gonna try it.
Sounds like there might be some truth to that.
You can Jund him out. This and the dragon. What about this?
I can Jund him out in mono black, Seth.
Yeah.
The colors.
This next one seems like a Crim adventure, though.
All right. Horned Lockwhale. 4 blue. It's an adventure card. It's a whale. Flash Ward 2. When it enters the battlefield tapped unless it's your turn. It's a 6/6. And then the instant is a 2 mana. The adventure part is an instant that's 2 mana. The owner of target attacking creature you don't control puts it on the top or bottom of the library.
This thing is cracked. I love this card. I love the 2 mana removal. The fact that I get a 6/6 whale, I don't care if it's tapped, if it's, it changes its color, it becomes a 2/2 at some point. The point here is the 6/6 is the cherry on top. All right? Like, it doesn't matter what it like, I would already pay the 2 mana, right? I love the 2 mana part. So then on top of that, I get a body that has ward and flash. Heck yeah. This card is sick.
What do you think, Richard?
They can choose to put it on the bottom. And because they can put it on the bottom, I think this is less good. Like,
it's still removal,
are we
right?
suffering for finishers in blue? Are we suffering for removal? Like, I guess it depends what you're playing with blue. Right? If you're playing blue-black, like, why do you need this? Unless you really care about that whale finisher.
But that's going to matter, right? Like, especially in a game of grinding, these creature halves are going to matter. And
the problem is the top half doesn't deal with Sheoldred, right? Like it's the Wandering Emperor deal again. They're like, well, Horned Lockwhale's in the format and they got 2 blue. I'm just going to hang back here with Sheoldred and never let you remove her, right?
This was coming into play tapped anyways, right? So it wasn't going to a surprise block.
I mean the tucking, the adventure part to get rid of Sheoldred off the board.
Sure. Well, but wait, this helps get rid of Sheoldred.
Well, if it attacks, right? It has to attack.
Sheoldred has to attack.
I mean, yeah, sure. Okay.
But even if your opponent doesn't attack, you're still gaining life, right? Like that's still something.
When you just run hard removal, like
but the hard removal
is the whale worth it? Are we lacking finishers such that we need the whale part of it to play kind of this subpar removal?
To me, it feels
I think it's
free rolly in a control deck, right? Like I see it as like if you look at like the Esper control decks that play like 0 creatures and they're like, I'm gonna try to win with Wandering Emperor after 20 turns. Like this is the way that speeds up your clock, right? You get a good enough removal spell. I'm imagining you play a couple copies. I don't know if this is a playset card, but you run a couple copies of this. You get a good enough removal spell in the early game, and then in the late game, you get a 6/6 that can actually close out the game after you farewell or, get things set up. You can just take over and close out the game really quickly. So I'd like it in Crim decks, I think. And also maybe mono blue. It's a little awkward because it's not a spell in the graveyard, which kind of matters for the mono blue tempo deck. But still, the removal spell for mono blue might be worth it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, whatever your taste of, preference and control, it'll do fine in that, right? And tempo, that's fine in that. Like, I
what
like
you're
that.
Looking for.
Tempo is not right. Tempo is not right. You just phase out their thing and like beat them down. But I think control, I could buy like a 2 of in control. You use this as your finisher instead of relying on Wandering Emperor tokens. Well, I don't know. Wandering Emperor tokens still close out the game pretty quickly.
Do you think we're overrating adventures as a whole? Because we're remembering how strong they were last time, in part because the actual adventures were even more push, and in part because of the payoffs. Like, do you think adventures are going to be much worse this time around without Innkeeper, without Lucky Clover, without Bone Crushers, and like the most pushed modern playable ones? Or is it just an inherently powerful card type because it's 2 cards in 1? It's got to still be good, right? Like, these still got to be good.
Just 2 cards in 1. And you just got to be happy about the front side, which is why I'm trying to figure out, like, if you had a spell that was just literally, like, 1 in a blue, like, target attacking creature puts top or bottom, would you play? We used to play Ether Gust. I guess Ether Gust would move stuff from the stack, though. But
it's
you played
also
it as, like,
permanent.
the non-stack version a lot of the times, and we're very happy about it, right?
Azurius Charm, the old school. We used to play that to, like, put an attacking creature on the top or bottom.
We legit love that we played a full 4 of them.
I think it's playable enough, and the free roll 6/6 is good to finish the game. Then I think it's actually a good card. I think you play this in control decks probably.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely where it's going. And Void Rend. It goes with Void Rend, see. After you Void Rended them.
Feral Encounter. It's a sorcery. Green. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may exile a creature card from among them. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. You may cast the exiled card this turn. At the beginning of the next combat phase this turn, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to up to 1 target creature you don't control.
Why do they have to word it that way?
Plus fight.
It's card drawn, like,
fine, right? Like, the card's not bad. The wording, though, is there not a better way to word what they were trying to do with this card? I feel like this is a simple effect. It's supposed to be get a creature from your top 5, invite spell something, but somehow it took a very convoluted paragraph of text to get that, like, relatively simple effect across.
I mean, yeah.
Also, so many people are they're gonna wait till they're post combat to cast this and then not get the bite because, like,
yeah.
I'm wondering how many people are gonna forget.
Oh God, I'm gonna do that. Oh, I'm definitely gonna do that. Is this card good? Like, so the problem in Standard is this is a very green card, right? If we're skeptical of Dreadnite, which is a little green, this is like pretty heavy green commitment.
I mean, like, I think these are going to serve different purposes, but yeah, like, I think that this is actually a sweet card if there is a green shell. Like, I think that if we find a green deck in Standard, mono green, whatever, maybe even Golgari, yada, 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 then I think this goes in.
Yeah. Good in the Mosswood Dreadnite.
This makes you want to play green.
Yeah.
This is a fight, like a bite, not even a fight, a bite, right? Yep. That lets you look at the top 5 and grab a creature. That's extremely good, right? The problem with, like, bite spells, like, what if I don't have a creature? What am I biting? Nothing, right? But now you can go fetch a creature if you actually need that, right? But just like you curve out, do we have any like death touchers that are legitimate?
I mean, there's always random thing of shit geeky. The one mana, one.
I mean, like, real cards, like you know the boss knight we're talking about, the Dreadnite. If that was death touch instead of trample,
okay,
combo.
There is sleeper agent or whatever, the resident sleeper agent from mono black. It eventually gets death touch.
Yeah,
Sheoldred kills everything.
Sheoldred kills
or whatever. I mean, right? But
so it's like it's kind of like the whale, right? In that it's an okay but not great removal spell early in the game, and then late in the game, it's also like something else. In this case, card draw. I think it's good. Yeah. You got to be a heavy green deck, so we'll see if that develops. Green, though.
It's kind of annoying to cast.
That's kind of the challenge. It is annoying to cast. And who wants to read it? Like, that's the other problem. There's just so much clunky text.
You might just win on that.
Wait, Invoke is banned, right?
Yes, thank God.
Yes.
My goodness.
Yes, it is.
So we don't have to worry about trying to curve out double green
no,
quad black.
No.
Whatever.
All right, I got some questions about this set for you. Just lightning round before we move out of Wilds of Eldraine. So question 1, Virtue Cycle. That's the adventure enchantment cycle at Mythic.
Yeah.
There's one in each color. Which one of the virtues would you pick as the best one of the cycle? And which is the worst of the cycle? Give me your little
what format?
Yeah.
So not commander for 60 card
Okay.
formats. For 60 card. I guess standard primarily then.
I mean, for me, I like standard. It's going to be the white one, and oh god, I can't. I know that we said Circle of Loyalty was, the truth, and then Embercleave was the better one of that cycle.
Cards.
Look, but I think, and maybe this is the familiarity, and that's why I'm voting for it. But I think the white one is the best one. And I'm not trolling. I do think Virtual Loyalty just seems really solid. And I have to imagine that, again, we're speaking standard. If we're talking standard, I think Virtue of Strength is probably the worst one, the green one. Because the adventure half, whatever, returns target creature or a land card from your graveyard to your hand for mana. But then the 7 mana, you have to tap a basic land for mana, by the way, for it to produce 3 times that much. So in standard, that's got to be the worst one.
Basic land restrictions tough on that. Like that's going to be the challenge. It really narrows the decks that could play it. What do you think, Richard? What's your best and worst of the virtues?
So it's either white or black as the best one. So the black one is 2 mana removal. That's -3/-3, gain 2 life. But then it lets you reanimate a creature every upkeep. But it's 7 mana, so it's expensive. But the removal plus gain life is kind of legit. And then the white one, it's just create a night token for 2 mana. And then the 5 mana cost of it, at the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Untap those creatures.
Untap
very
those
aggressive
creatures.
I mean, that's kind of
And
relevant,
defensive.
right? You beat them down and then you can block. Those 2 are the best. Green is the worst because you have 7 mana and then you're gonna triple your mana and you're playing basics only. Like I'm like, what? This is clearly a commander card. Maybe the red can pop off if there's a burn deck.
The red one's not bad. Like the red one's kind of Bone Crusher, 2 mana shock as an instant, and then 5 mana whenever non-combat damage is dealt to your opponent, you get to exile that many cards and play them this turn. Like I think that one. I see black and white as the clear winners. I would put those as like the A tier ones. And then I think red is like the B tier one. And then blue, and it pains me to say this because it's a Panharmonicon, is like a C tier one. And then the green one, the only thing I will say is like tripling your mana at 7 does turn like Light Up the Night or Shivan Devastator into a lethal one-shot the next turn, which probably isn't good enough, but it is kind of hilarious that you play this and untap and just like fireball your opponent for 20 and close out the game. But I think it is the worst of the bunch for standard. And honestly, what about commander? Is that the worst for commander too? I feel like that basic land restriction just kind of kills that card for me, unless you're like mono green Omnath or something. Like unless you're a pretty specific deck, like I feel like
it's Nyx Bloom Ancient do? It's just any land.
Yeah, any land.
Any mana source. So your mana rocks as well. And
but
anything,
it's an 8-drop like enchantment creature or something, right? This thing is
it's 7.
So it is 7 still,
7?
but it is a creature,
mana.
so it dies to stuff.
This doesn't die to Doomblade.
Yep.
Sure.
So I mean, maybe if you're mono green, you're trying to do something, Helix Pinnacling people or something. I don't know. Like I can see a use for this, but I don't think it's particularly strong.
All right, next question of the lightning mold. We got some power creep in this set. You need to tell me if this is good or bad for Magic. So we got Cheeky House Mouse. Cheeky House Mouse, everyone's favorite one drop. It's literally a Savannah Lions, except it also has an adventure mode where for 1 mana you can pump a creature and make it unblockable by big things for a turn. And then we got an upgraded Divination, Quick Study. A lot of people have been talking about this card. It's just 3 mana draw 2, but instant speed. Divination, 3 mana draw 2, sorcery speed. What do you think of this power creep? Like, is this, we always talk about power creep, and I feel like we're always talking about it in a negative context. Too much power creep, snowballing out of control. Is this what we're talking about, or is this kind of power creep different than when we're always complaining about power creep being out of control?
This is the good power creep, right? Like I like these cards. I think they're pretty sweet. I mean, okay, Cheeky House Mouse, cute in whatever mono white aggro deck, and very adorable. You know what? It seems like Sheoldred has Seth's number, but you know what? Sheoldred ain't blocking this, right? So Seth, I found your best friend. It's Cheeky House Mouse.
Cheeky House Mouse, we're getting in there.
I mean, it's nuts, right? Because like, you know, you saw Savannah Lions. I saw it all the time as a kid. I'm like, oh my god, that's a $20 like just card, right? For no reason. And now you have this at uncommon, and it's clearly just better. And then whatever. What's the name of the blue one again? I forgot. The divination.
Quick study is the instant speed divination. Yeah.
Pot of Greed. Is that you? Is that you? Pot of Greed. Have we gotten there? It's not Pot of Greed. It's cool though. I'm glad that now you can divinate. I'm pretty excited for that at instant speed. That's honestly.
Do you think it's playable, Krim? Like, so a decade ago, Pro Tour Born of the Gods was one with, I believe, 4 divinations in the main deck of Ivan Flock's blue-white control deck. Is instant speed divination enough to make the card relevant in 2023, or is that just still not a playable card, even at instant speed?
I mean, even at instant speed, I'm talking standard. Maybe somebody brings it somewhere else, right? But like, don't we have compulsive research or whatever? And then we also have thirst for knowledge, draw 3, ditch 2, unless you ditch an artifact. More often than not, I feel like most of these decks want to ditch some stuff so that this way it does some kind of nonsense in their synergistic deck, right? Like whether it's Tolarian Terror and it wants instants and sorceries in the yard so it can be cheaper, right? Like I think this card's cool. I think it's cute. I like to see the power creep on this, but I don't think it beats some of the other stuff that's in the format.
What about you, Richard? What do you think of this power creep?
Quick Study's good. In my day, we paid 2 mana to draw a card at instant speed and then flash that back for another 3 mana.
Yeah.
It's called Think Twice. Draw 2.
Think Twice.
Think Twice is right? Sick, dude.
That might have also been in that Pro Tour winning deck, come to think of it.
Instant versus sorcery is a huge deal, right? Because if you're a control deck, they play something, you're like, oh, I don't need to remove it. I'm just going to draw cards. And then, you know, I'll untap and remove it or untap sweep or whatever. I don't know how relevant that is in 2023 when you need to remove everything. But the play pattern is there. And Krim was mentioning these kind of conditional, 3 mana draw 2s. This is unconditional. Like, you don't need to have an artifact or some weird synergy to make this work. You just slam it in your deck. So I think Quick Study is actually very playable. I'm very excited for it in Commander. I think it'll be pretty good in Commander as well. You hold up your Teferi's Pro or your whatever, right? And then you just pass a turn around and draw 2. So I actually really like
there's
this
so
low-end
much
power
than
creep.
this in Commander.
But it's like, it's a free card. It's a common, like everyone will have access to it. You can like put your deck in it. It's serviceable. So I kind of like this lower end power creep as opposed to like, here's Jeweled Lotus. Here's an $80 card that you can put in every single Commander deck. This is free. You can put it in everywhere, right? It costs 25 cents. So I like Quick Study.
Yeah, to me, this is also the good kind of power creep. Like, I think this is where power creep's a positive, and it's not very interesting if Divination's the best card draw spell at 3 mana for 30 years of Magic. Like, we want cards to keep getting better, I think. That's interesting. We just don't want it to happen too fast, and I think this is, like, the perfect place with stuff like Savannah Lions Divination that hasn't been constructed viable in a decade, 15 years, 20 years in some cases. Those are the kind of cards that should get a little better, and there's still some nostalgia to it. Yeah, it's, like, goofy, and it's Cheeky House Mouse instead of Savannah Lions or whatever, but it's cool to see, like, a Savannah Lions that might actually be playable again. It's cool to see a Divination that might actually be playable again. So I also am a big fan of this style of power creep, and I hope they keep doing it in, these lower rarity cards, these upgrades, these slight upgrades. Last question about the set. Does this feel like an unset to you? Is every set an unset now? The more I hear Cheeky House Mouse, Raging Battle Mouse, Bunnic Horns, like, I feel like every set's an unset now. I remember, like, not that long ago, they couldn't print squirrels in Black Border because they were too goofy, so they had to save them for unsets because squirrels, like, that's not Magic. Now we got bunnycorns, raging mice.
Is this not the set to do?
Seth.
Yeah, like A, yeah, Gandalf. B, but like, I do think that like Wilds of Eldraine and just Eldraine as a whole is the perfect set for this. It makes sense here, right? The fact that there's literally a gingerbread attacking you, right? I'm here for it. It makes sense in Eldraine. I don't think it's like out of this world. It doesn't break the immersion because it's all a bunch of fantasies, like fantasy stories, and like there's fairies, there's trickery, there's nonsense here, right? We're talking like there's like a donut that's attacking me, right? Like I don't know. I mean, there's a character that has a gummy worm on her arm.
Yep. I mean, there's someone beating you with a piece of barbecue.
Yeah. Yeah. What's it called?
The rotisserie
skewer.
knight,
Yeah, rotisserie skewer. Or knight, yeah.
That sounds like unset cards. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but to me, those are unset cards.
Nothing in 2020. Like, we're just all meta slaves.
But Richard, it is flavor. Okay. It's food, and on top of that,
it's a mouse versus like I don't know, a goblin versus a flying pig, whatever. Like nobody really. They're like, oh, does it beat Sheoldred? Right? Yeah. Like if it does, like we're all game. So I think everything's an unset. I don't think anyone cares anymore. I think we're fine with Universes Beyond as well. Yeah. I'm sure there's some old, like hardcore Magic fan. Like I've been playing since '95, and I'm here to play like goblins or something.
Mice in my game.
Yeah,
Bunny corn. I'm out.
I think like Ragavan like sealed that, like pirate monkey, whatever.
Yeah.
Dominating modern. Like nobody cares. So I don't know. I think it's okay.
Without all the Universes Beyond, without all of that, even if there was never ever a Universes Beyond, this would still be fine.
I don't think so. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I do think their tone as Magic has shifted, and I think Wizards has become more okay with like being a little goofier, like being more punnier. To me, like I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's probably a good thing, but I feel like some of the stuff we see in normal sets now are stuff that 10 years ago would only show up in unsets because they would think it was too goofy or whatever. So I think it's probably a good thing that Wizards has loosened up a little bit, but I definitely feel like there's a notable tone change, I would say, in the last few years with some of this stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, like
we get the secret the Secret Lair Pringles is when we know they've gone.
They're aware.
The Pringles crossover. Speaking of Secret Lairs, that was our last topic today before we run out of time. They just announced the fall super drop. 7 new Secret Lair drops going on sale as we speak. Actually, they went on sale like an hour ago, so you can check them all out over at secretlair.com. But I want to ask you guys, do you have a favorite out of this new drop series? Give me your one pick if you're gonna snag one.
So this is gonna seem weird because they do have a banned one, right? Like the problem is I love the art. I see what they're going for when they like you have Tevis Zat, which clearly looks like the classic spaghetti font, like death metal, like black metal music stuff, like Black Dahlia Murder, yada yada yada. But I don't like any of the cards. I like Vial Smasher, and that's about it. And Tevis Zat's like cool. Doom of Fools, by the way. But what's funny here is like, I think of the arts, I really, really like the VHS ones. Like the first sliver as Alien, pretty much. Like look at Rampant Growth looking like a horror movie. Like it's Rewind like a sci-fi movie. Food Chain, clearly another monster movie. Between that and Magic the Baseballing, those two are actually the ones I'm the most hyped on. Look, you have all the Lorwyn Planeswalkers as if they were baseball cards. How hilarious is that? That is so funny. I need those.
I'm old. I couldn't even tell what the first ones were. The Rampant Growth first sliver. I'm like, what is this? I'm like, I'm too young, I guess. I can't even tell these VHS.
But how is that possible? Because I love them.
I don't know, Krim. I just didn't recognize it. There's just too much weird art now.
You didn't go to a Blockbuster? This just looks like if you went to Blockbuster.
They didn't look like this, man.
What are you talking about?
Like 80s VHS or something.
I like the meta joke with Rewind in there. That was a nice touch to add Rewind into that Secret Lair drop.
My favorite is the baseball cards. It better come with a stick of stale gum.
It's gotta have the gum. You gotta have the gum.
It's gotta have the gum. I don't know about these choice of OG Lorwyn Planeswalkers. Like, how am I ever gonna play this ever? I guess Party Jace is kind of playable.
Party Jace, I still jam. And Liliana Vess.
Like, close. Yeah, actually, Garrick too. The untapping 2 lands, but they aren't the most.
But when's the last time you put one of these in your commander deck?
Yeah, that's true.
Oh. Never mind.
They do look cool though. The cards, like if you're listening to the audio cast, on the front it has like pretty baseball cardy looking art, and then the back you have to flip it over to get the stats, and that's where you see all the abilities, just like a baseball card. So I like that one as well. The other one I'd give a shout out to is the kind of psychedelic bugging out one. The Grist in that is pretty sweet looking with the kind of this big skull, and it's just kind of it reminds me of like old like 70s psychedelic posters or something. So I think that one looks pretty cool as well. So those would be the top tier for me. The music one, I also was it looked a little too metally for me. Like it was a little too hardcore for my music taste, I think. But
too hard.
Little too hardcore.
We just got to get you to listening to like breakdowns and random stuff like that.
Everyone thinks I'm a metalhead because of the long hair and the beard, but actually don't listen to that much metal. I don't like metal that much.
Wait, are these cards tournament legal?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, are they tournament playable?
I mean, Food Chain.
I can't even
Food
read
Chain's a real
the card after Grist. What is it? I have no idea what
the card after. Oh boy, yes, Death Priest. I see Death Priest.
Something Death Priest.
Yeah.
And like the Planeswalkers, like they're on the back. Can you do that?
It is Mazarek Krull Death Priest. We have a Grist in there, Noxious Revival, Giant Adaphage, and Eldritch Evolution. So of that, Eldritch Evolution would get played in some format, and maybe Noxious Revival and Grist. So that's
but these are gonna be Pringles though. These are not tournament players.
You can get non-foil.
There are non-foil options, yeah.
Yes.
So,
I want to see 2023 tournament Magic. I want to be in a feature match, and I want to have all secret cards in my deck.
All secret layers, all different secret layers. One of this style, one of that style.
I'm not far from it. Also, did you all see? Like, okay, I love Kev Walker's art. Like that Betrays is so cool, and the Fleshbag Marauder, but I cannot put money towards anything with Carnage Tyrant. So that is just a violation of literally my existence. So yeah, cool Secret Lair, but oddly enough, because something I do want to talk about in this is that look at all the art before it. It's so wild. Like and then you have
too.
Here it is. No, like again, I love Kev Walker and their art, but like, and then there's just art, right?
It's
like just normal
like
art.
Good, very good, solid Magic art, but like art you would see in any main set or whatever. It's very nice art, very good art, but it just looks so different than all the other stuff because all the other stuff is like pretty far out there and very different than everything we've seen before. But and then the Kev Walker art is just very classic, yeah.
I've come to like kind of like that though, right? Like it's like Secret Layers, their chance to run wild, get an artist that, doesn't normally do like magic art or something like that, and you can get real weird and abstract things that make Richard wonder what game he's playing, Players in that bracket.
This is actually really, it's just like real, like normal art. In like the 1600s, people are like, how do shadows work? And they're like trying to draw realistic photos. And then by the time we get to the 1800s or 1900s, whatever, everyone's like mastered that. So art is now like one red line. And you're like, wow, that's exquisite, right? Like this is where we're at with Magic cards, right? We're like, oh, that's the normal frame. We don't care about that. I want the card to be as unreadable as possible, and I want it to be a puzzle for you to figure out what card I'm trying to resolve. Like we're at this phase where the next card will be like a red square, and you'll be like, well, that represents the dimensional cube. It's doubling season or something, right? That's where we're getting. That's where we're getting at, right?
Every match is gonna time out because everyone's got to be like, I got to break down this art, what it means to me. It's a Rorschach test, essentially.
One last shout out to the Secret Layers, the VHS one. The cards in that are actually kind of ridiculously valuable. I think Wizards didn't take into account the price spikes because of Commander Masters. First Sliver
and
right
Rewind.
now is First Sliver is like $65 just to get a copy of it now. So if you're someone who's looking to upgrade your Sliver deck from Commander Masters, and that's one of the cards you need, being able to snag the whole airdrop for $30 is like half price compared to just buying a copy of the First Sliver by itself. And Food Chain's like $20 too. So that seems like a very good buy from a financial perspective if you need those cards. So keep that one in mind. That's the big winner financially. The other ones I think are all like, if you like the art, go for it, but the card value is not absurd. But the value on the VHS one is actually kind of off the charts because of the First Sliver. But
anyway, the artwork is worth it alone.
The artwork is pretty sweet. Anyway, Richard, we're at the end of the cast. We're running out of time. Can we sneak in one fish mail for all the fish mail lovers out there? Also, how do people send in fish mail?
If you have questions, send to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air. Okay. Magnus Magnuson. With Modern Horizons 3 on the horizons, and it likely being at a higher power level, where would you like to see power level concentrated in the set? At the 1 to 2 mana value range, e.g. Ragavan or Bowmasters, or 3 to 4 mana value range, Fable or the One Ring? Where would you like to see power?
All those cards are probably like a bit too good for their time, but I think you can do a lot more with the higher mana values. What about like 6? Well, what about 6 mana value? We need some like improved Titans. Five's underappreciated.
But we need a new Tron target. It's that time again. We need Tron to actually use their 7 mana instead of stopping at 4.
I do actually really want like 6. Like I want there to be power creep on 6 drops that are played in standard. Right, I do want to see that again. Right, like I'm hyped on this like the dragon with Bargain, the mythic one from like WoW, but like, yeah, I don't know. I just want 6 drops and up to be respected again.
I mean, I
want.
Oh, go ahead.
I got an option that's not here, and it's 0. I'm gonna get some free spells, baby.
No, dude.
We're gonna get more free spells. The only way to sell cards is to make them free. So last time we had the evoke cycle. This time we want another pack cycle. What do we want here? We're gonna get another free cycle for you to play with in Modern. We don't need lands at all.
The only thing we really know about this set is double face card theme. So maybe we'll get our first ever double face free spells. That seems fair.
Actually, I can see it being like front side, like cost something, and then it exiles, then you can play it for free afterwards. Something like that. But
yeah, I can see that. I mean, I'm hyped for this set. It's gonna be very interesting to see what they do. But no more Ragavans, please. We can skip that for now. Anyway, how do people send in fish mail for next week, Richard?
All right, send to the hashtag MTGFishmail on Twitter.
And I think that brings us to the end of episode 448 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So Richard, Krim, thanks for hanging out. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And we'll be back next week to talk about whatever goes on in the world of Magic. So until then, have an amazing week, everyone. And this is the crew signing out.